Hey, ladies and gents, young people. Today we're doing part two of our intro to macromolecules. We are focusing on lipids. So for your notes titles, write lipids. We still have the same target. You may choose to write this down if you want, but now we're focusing on lipids. How are we combining? What are these lipids used for? All that sort of stuff. All right, so we talked about our carbohydrates before. Today we're talking about lipids. So right here I've got a picture of nice fatty butter. Yum. All right. So why is it yum? Again, we talked about this the other day. It's high density energy storage. So when we're looking at our carbohydrate rich, it's also lipid rich sundae. That cream of the milk, that's that energy storage. All right. So, bacon. All right. We've got a few different types. When we're looking at bacon here, we have all that nice, the white part of the bacon, that's the fat. And then when you cook it, that kind of renders out. It melts out and we get grease. So grease is just the liquid form of the fat on the bacon. And like I said, that's long-term energy storage. We talked about if you ate a bunch of those sundaes every day, you would start, instead of just building some glycogen, you'd start building some fat to hold that on to later. Because remember, thousands of years ago, even just hundreds of years ago, and then places around the world now, all right, you don't always have food ready for you. So if you get lots of food and high energy food, you want to save it, and you save that high energy food as triglycerides here. Triglycerides, that's your vocab word you're going to want to underline or highlight pink. That's what I recommend. All right, so we have these triglycerides. We talk about them as fats and oils. And then we have nonpolar and hydrophobic. What does that mean? So when we talk about water, we talk about there's a positive side and a negative side, kind of like a battery. And so water is polar, right? Most of these oils are going to be nonpolar. And I'm sure you've seen before where you mix water and oil and you shake it up. Well, it always separates back out. That's because it's nonpolar. So nonpolar and polar things don't mix well, right? And then we have something called fatty acids. I don't know why I like that word, fatty acid. And they have these long chains. And I'll show you some pictures. And then this next little video that you should watch will explain that fatty acid chain to you. And there's a couple types. There's, just drew a blank. There's saturated and unsaturated, right? So again, in the Google Classroom, there's a link to this. Make sure you watch it. So many of you told me that you didn't watch those. Actually, you just watch this. Watch this video. It explains it. All right. So again, reviewing polar and nonpolar. Polar means it's hydrophilic. It likes, it mixes with water. Nonpolar, it doesn't mix with water. So here we've got our nonpolar oil and our polar water, and notice they separate out. So if we are looking at our triglyceride, tri means 3, we've got our glycerol molecule. This is kind of like our monomer, and then our fatty acids are other monomers. And so now we have our polymer. So we have this glycerol molecule and these 3 fatty acids. 3 tri, and a glyceride. And so all that energy is being stored in here, okay? And you notice these are nice and straight, easily stackable. And then this one, there's a kink in it. And what do you notice? This green part, that's that double bond. So that double bond is going to change the shape. And so if you have a saturated triglyceride, they're going to stack nice and well. And that's like things like butter, lard, those sorts of things. Those animal fats stack nice and neat. And those are the type that stack nice and neat inside your arteries and cause heart problems. That's why it's a little bit healthier to have oils, because they don't stack nice and neat and they pass through a little bit easier. So fats like from that bacon fat, they'll be solid at room temperature, where oils are liquid at room temperature. That's the main difference between an oil and a fat. It's just saturated versus unsaturated. So aside from energy, another big thing important about our triglycerides and other fats is they are used as insulation. So we've got this elephant seal. Actually saw some the other week at Point Reyes. You can go down and see them there. These elephant seals have a ton of blubber. If you've ever been to Point Reyes, you know it's kind of cold, and the water is just as cold as well. And so you need that insulation. So fat will serve as insulation. Phospholipids. So this, we're going to start a lab on Friday. Really conduct most of it on Monday and Tuesday next week, where we're going to have a cell membrane. So phospholipids make up our cell membrane. So we have a hydrophilic head and hydrophobic tails, and we have this bilayer, these two layers, and these are what create our cell membrane. Super important for us to understand phospholipids because this is what controls what goes in and out of a cell, right? And like I said, we'll be talking about this more this week and next week with our lab and how things move across that lab with diffusion, osmosis, those sorts of things. So check through your notes right now. What kinds of energy storage do lipids provide? Is it long-term? Is it short-term? What is considered lipid? What are some examples? What do polar and nonpolar mean? What makes a triglyceride? What cell organelle is made up of lipids? So that organelle is a cell part. And so what cell part are we talking about that's made up of phospholipids? So things with membranes. So we've talked about a couple of things that have membranes. We talked about chloroplasts that have membranes, mitochondria that have membranes, and then technically it's not organelle, but that big important part, that cell membrane in particular, that's super important. And then two functions of lipids, right? Other, what are some things that lipids do? Now, another type of lipid would be wax. And if you notice, I've got it beading up here. Like I wax my car so that the water beads up on it because it's hydrophobic. And so this leaf on the top, it wants to repel and have that. So it's got this wax called cuticle. The wax here used for support in this honeycomb, that is a lipid, right? And they use those long fatty acid chains to make that kind of hydrophobic part that keeps the water out. Cholesterol. Inside, we've got these molecules, these short ring chain molecules. These are also lipids, and they help keep it fluid. So these can't all stack next to each other perfectly nice and neat because these cholesterol molecules are in the way. So they keep it liquid. Testosterone is a hormone. So hormones and steroids, what they do is they send messages, and you use the shape of them to bind to other cells. If you take AP biology, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that. But these are sending messages to help the cell or different organ systems, different cells far away, talk to each other, communicate with each other. So they can send messages long distances. And what's kind of interesting, this testosterone, one cell type may act differently than another type, and it activates what DNA gets read and turned into proteins and all sorts of stuff. So another type of lipid is a steroid and hormone, and they're not energy storage, they're sending messages. Right? So here I've got another little bit here. It says steroids send messages. Why must steroids be small? Well, the reason they need to be small is they need to get through the cell membrane to deliver their message. Okay? All right. And sometimes they don't fit all the way through. They fit right into what's called a receptor, and then that receptor sends the message through the membrane. So they need to fit into the receptor or be able so small that they get through the membrane completely. All right. So I'll move my face there so you can read. All right. So that's basically what we're talking about for our notes. A little short bit. Make sure you go back, add things to your little matrix. Let me grab that. All right. So by now, you should have filled up the part on carbohydrates. Now you can fill in the part on lipids. Make sure you add color, add details. Go through, add repetitions to your notes, chunk it, highlight vocab, all that good sort of stuff. All right. Have a good day, and I'll see you later.